We're looking here at score concession analysis. It's actually one of the 5 key pieces of analysis I would always have taken, either as a manager or as a statistician, even before I was using the program. It works on the basis that every score which your side concedes had one crux move where the opposition breached your rearguard. To that end, the analysis goes back on the video and it analyses which of your defenders was culpable for that key breach in that score. Further, it will categorise every score into a grade 1, a grade 2 or a grade 3 breach. A grade 1 quite simply means that actually there wasn't a huge amount that any individual defender could have done to prevent the score. It was so methodical. A grade 2, the most common score concession of all, basically means that somebody was taken on and beaten for the score. A grade 3, on the other hand, means that the opposition have kicked the score without having to actually take on or beat any individual defender. So, with that, let's take a look at a few examples based on the Killyclogher-Slough-Nail Ulster Club Football semi-final in 2016. We'll see here the total result. Altogether, Slough-Nail conceded no goals, 4 points, no penalties, no 45s, 5 scoreable frees. Now, the key point to note here with regards to scoreable frees is once a free is conceded inside 45 metres, I would consider it to be scoreable. That is to say, from that point on, it's statistically insignificant from your point of view as a defensive manager whether the free is converted or not. So I would always include all scoreable frees. Moving slightly away from that, because you do want to account for every single score, any free outside 45 metres I would only count if it was actually converted and scored. Moving on, you'll see your table here will break down. There were no grade 1s conceded. There were 5 grade 2s and 4 grade 3s, with a total of 9 scores or scoreable frees conceded. On the day, they conceded 8 points. All in all, a fairly impressive tally. So with that, let's have a look at a couple of examples so you get a feel for what the difference between grade 2s and 3s are, and then we'll go back and look at a grade 1 and we'll move on and look at a couple of hurling ones as well. So let's start here with a fairly straightforward grade 2. Now, I've chosen this one in particular because you could start splitting hairs about why this player is free in the middle of the field, but in the end of the day, it's not the crux breach. You're about to see the crux breach is quite straightforward here. There's a ball played in, the corner forward has got out in front of the corner back, he's won the ball and he's kicked the ball over. So that's a grade 2 concession marked against number 4, Carl McCaig. So we move on later on in the game and we're going to see another grade 2, which is fairly clear cut again. So this time it's number 21, Ryan Bradley. So we're going to see as he comes into the picture, he's definitely goal side of the number 17 in a position to prevent him from getting any further. However, the number 17 takes him on, so there you have your key breach. As we see, it's actually hand passed on before it's kicked over, but the key breach was when Bradley was taken on. So there it is, it's kicked over. That's quite simply a grade 2. Here we're going to look at a grade 3 and a scoreable free. And what you're going to see here, there's a throw in. There's absolutely no imminent threat to the Slough-Nail goal. And you're going to see this score is earned without having to take on and beat any single player. So as the ball is thrown in, you're going to see, to be fair to Slough-Nail, Patsy Bradley is probably fouled here, but he doesn't get it. From this point here, we're in a situation where the ball is in a muddle of players. It's at least 45 metres from goal. The player, the number 14 here, who's about to try and pick the ball up, more or less has his back to goal. But the number 5 here, McNeil, comes in, makes a challenge, and basically the point is this free has been gifted to Killyclogher. They didn't particularly have to earn that score. Again, coming back to the key scientific definition of a grade 3, they didn't have to take on and beat any player to gain that score. And the free is awarded. Now again, this is quite important in terms of analysing your scoreable frees, because from the point it's actually fouled, it is definitely outside 45 metres. there's two things happen. Number one, the free taker takes a few steps more than he probably should in with the ball, or should be allowed to. But regardless, the ball is kicked over the bar. It is a score, so it has to be marked down. So that's a grade 3 scoreable free. We're going to move on and have a quick look here at a couple of scores from the Dublin Mayo All-Ireland final in 2016, just to shed a bit further light on what is a grade 2 and what is a grade 3 before looking at a grade 1. So here we're going to look at a textbook case of a grade 3. Now, we're going to move that back slightly. Now, we'll start off by seeing here, there's a hand pass. Whether it's a bad hand pass or whether Davy Byrne is slow to receive it, we could split hairs. However, what you're going to see, this isn't the key crux in the move, despite the fact that maybe the Dublin defender thought at this point that it was going to be. It appears as though Mayo have an overlap here, but as we move the video on, we're actually going to see that it's not the case. Dublin have 2 defenders against 1 behind them. So at this point, really, Dublin are well within their capacity to defend man on man. However, as you'll see here, there's your 2 defenders. There is a Mayo man inside behind the 2 of them. The ball is flicked onto him. And from a position where Dublin could and probably should have been man on man, Mayo have kicked the point over without having to beat any individual player. Now again, if we go back, we'll see from this point, if Dublin were now overlapped, you'd say, well, there's no defender from this point forward could do anything. So you'd be looking at laying the culpability either of Philly McMahon if you thought he played a bad pass, or Davy Byrne if you thought he was slow to intercept it. But as I say, the key element here is that Dublin are in a position to defend this man on man from here. There's 2 players behind. 1 could and should pick up the extra Mayo man here. It probably looks on this viewing as though Michael Fitzsimons is culpable, but the chances are, it's impossible to tell from this recording, but the chances are Kieran Kilkenny was actually responsible for the Mayo man. He's left him. By the time Fitzsimons gets to him, it's too late. So based on the limited video footage I have there, obviously ideally as a statistician you'd be recording a wider angle. I would say that was probably a grade 3 against Kieran Kilkenny. If not, it was against Mick Fitzsimons, but either way it was definitely a grade 3. Now, this one is an interesting one. It's a grade 1. You won't find too many of them, but you're going to see from start to finish there's not a huge amount that Johnny Cooper here can do to prevent this score which Andy Moran gets. You could make the argument that Moran has stolen the yard on him here, therefore it's a grade 2. However, anybody who's played as a defender knows that from this distance it's practically impossible to prevent a forward from gaining primary possession on a hand pass. So we're going to work on the premise that really Cooper couldn't prevent Moran from getting the initial possession, and from the point at which he receives it, there's really nothing that Cooper can do, because he couldn't have run around this side of the defenders before the ball was played, because Moran simply could have gone the other way. You'll see what happens. There's no gap for Cooper to stay with Moran. By the time he catches up, the ball is kicked over the bar, and in truth there's really very little that Johnny Cooper could have done to prevent that score. So I would mark that as a grade 1 concession. Now, in terms of showing you how the program actually works at this point, let's have a look. So let's assume Johnny Cooper hadn't been the key player breached for score to this point. We'll go more players. Johnny Cooper is picked from our list of names. It's a point, and we're going to call it a grade 1. And you have the option here to put in a comment. So we'll say, for the sake of argument, that he couldn't stay with the scorer. That's a very basic one. I'd obviously be putting in something more accurate, but it gives you an idea. Now, the point there is you'll see that it's now been marked down as a point grade 1, and you'll see when you hover over it, it will give you the reason for the score. I obviously didn't write something in here, so nothing shows up. Over here again, you'll start to see your totals. Obviously I haven't taken all of the scores in this game, but you'll see Johnny Cooper 1 point, Kieran Kilkenny 1 point, and the total is 2 over here. And we have 1 grade 1, no grade 2s, and 1 grade 3. And that's how the entire system will tally. We'll have a quick look at the 2016 Hurling All-Ireland Final, just to put things into context from a hurling point of view. And we're actually going to look at the very opening play in the game. It actually doesn't end up in a score, but it's as good an example as you're going to find of what would constitute a grade 3 in a hurling game. So we're going to slow it right down. And we're going to see Kilkenny are going to come away with this ball. Now, from this point, Kilkenny don't have any overlap created, and therefore, from a technical defensive point of view, at this point, they should have to take on a player and beat him in order to be able to get a score here. You'll see here the yellow helmet is close to the black helmet here, and really should be taking responsibility for this player. As we move on, let's have a look at what happens. The half-back has actually moved off his man. By the time he receives the hand pass, he's being chased by a player here in the white helmet who wasn't actually responsible for him in the first place. I think it's Walter Welsh. He runs through and he has a strike at goal without actually having had to take on any player. As it happens, it goes wide, so it's not a score. If it did go over, I'd be marking that down as grade 3, which would have been against the yellow helmet. It was number 7, which on the day was Pádraig Maher, of course. Yeah. So now I have marked one in here from earlier. Again, to have a look at a grade 2, it's against Michael Cahill. So we look in here. So this is a textbook grade 2. Long ball played in. His man gets out and he's taken on and he's beaten and it's put over the bar. So that's, again, it's fairly much simple as you like. It's a grade 2 score concession. So again, all in all, that will all tally over to your box here, and at the end of the game you'll have a readout of which individual players have been responsible for how many scores and what kind of scores. We'll have a quick look again at the Slough-Nail Killyclogher game, and you'll see here our score concession analysis. So we'll see here it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 players and 1 systematic, which is the last thing we'll look at. 1, 2 for these 2 lads and 1 for each of the rest. And as I say, at the end, you're left at your table. It will tell you which individuals have conceded what amount of scores and what the team have conceded as a whole. The final thing to look at here, as there is in many of the boxes, here we actually have systematic. And the reason I put systematic in here is that you couldn't actually say that any individual defender was at fault for this. Slough-Nail have clearly got a policy of pressing players high up in certain positions, so numbers of players are going to individuals. Of course, the flip side of that is that it does leave free players like this man here with his hand up on the edge of the box. As the ball is played in, you'll see what happens, because it did appear like number 12 was taking responsibility for that player, but he has quite correctly cut inside goal side of the number 15. As the ball is played out, there's actually no player directly responsible. The man who came in here, it wasn't really his position to deal with that man. So what you've got here is a situation where there were a number of players drawn to a different area of the field. It was picked up. You couldn't say any individual was at fault. So that's a systematic concession. It is, however, a grade 3, because once again, nobody actually had to be taken on and beaten for that score. So that's basically how your score concession analysis works, and I would be confident in saying that if you do choose to use it, there'll be many a cornerback, maybe wing back, who will probably get far more credit on the basis that you won't see their name appear here much at all. Men who quite frequently may well go unnoticed.